covering the community, events, and people of Georgia, Carolina. This is the Means Report. Here is Brad Means.
Welcome back to the Means Report, everybody. So happy that you are spending part of your Sunday with us. We are grateful to you for that, and we hope that your springtime now is off to a good start. Hard to believe that the ice storm is behind us. Now our focus is on Masters and all things springtime, and we just hope everything is going well as we all get set for that. A lot of fun and games, to be sure, in the coming weeks. We're in the middle of the Aiken trials. I have an Aikenite in the audience, so I have to make sure that I give them their props. But before we focus on the fun of springtime, we do want to take the next half hour and talk about a very serious subject, and that subject is child sexual abuse and child sex crimes. And boy, are we privileged to have one of the nation's foremost experts on those subjects. He has a wealth of experience in the area, and he has come to the set of the Means Report to share some of it with us today. I want you all to join me in welcoming Jim Clemente. And Jim, if you'll allow me just a moment to give some quick background on you. This is a man who's a veteran FBI agent. He was a special supervisory agent, worked in the behavioral analysis unit. Before that, he headed the child sex crimes protection team for no less than the New York City Law Department. He's investigated and consulted on thousands of cases, interviewing the victims, interviewing the offenders, and he really is a crusader when it comes to spotting and stopping crimes against children. Oh, and by the way, for the better part of the last decade or so, he's been a contributor and a writer, and I'll say co-star, Jim, you'll say cameo, on CBS's hit drama, Criminal Minds. Jim Clemente, what a pleasure. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's an honor to be here. And I have to say, I've been across the country and around the globe, but I have never had a warmer welcome than I have when I came here to South Carolina.
You are so nice. That is great, and that speaks well to our friends across the Savannah, and I hope that your visit goes well here.
Yes.
We record this on a Thursday, and the reason Jim's in town is because he's going to speak tonight at USC Aiken, Thursday night that is, on behalf of the Child Advocacy Center. And so I want to tell the folks who are going to watch this next answer on the news tonight, as well as the folks viewing on Sunday, what are you talking about? What are these speeches geared toward when you go from town to town?
Well, I think in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to cover issues that people in their families and their communities can actually apply to their own lives and to children that they know, so that they can help protect these kids. I mean, the worst thing is when children are victimized and nobody knows about it. And we want to encourage children to talk about it. And the only way to do that is to have parents talk to their children about it and have a dialogue back and forth so that they're comfortable talking about the subject.
I should point out that you have instant credibility in this arena because of your experience when you were just 15 years old. Tell the viewers what happened to you and how that led to where you are now.
When I was 15, I was fairly sheltered. I lived in a good family. I had 5 brothers and sisters, wonderful parents, and I was happy about life. And I certainly looked up to the director of the CYO camp that I was at. And he was my basketball coach. He was the director of the camp. And he treated me special. He told me I was one of the best campers there. I was one of the hardest workers. I learned the best. I was very smart. And he asked me to stay after at the camp to help close it down. It was just he and I, 600 acres in the middle of the woods. And he started giving me alcohol. He started giving me pornography magazines and talking to me about sex. And it lowered my ambitions. It made me feel a debt of gratitude to him. And as I said, I looked up to him. So when he started talking to me about these things, it really was amazing because no other adult had spent the time or the effort or the energy to talk to me about these things. And so I was very naive. And then it changed. And then he touched me. And I didn't know what to do. I was shocked. I was afraid because I wasn't ready for this kind of an experience. But at the same time, I felt shame for it. I felt like I had already done things that were wrong. He had gotten me to drink when I shouldn't have. Sure. He had gotten me to drive a car when I didn't have my license yet. He had got me to look at pornography when I knew it was wrong. So he knew that that was a way to control me. We call it grooming. And what he was able to do expertly was keep me controlled. He knew that I wouldn't run home and say I did these bad things and then this bad thing happened to me.
Sure.
So we have to understand, we have to teach our children that, yes, they may do something wrong, and they'll think that they're going to get in trouble for it. And for them, trouble that's this big or trouble that's this big makes no difference. It all means the same thing to them. So they're trying to avoid getting in trouble, and because of that, they're keeping it to themselves.
Let me ask you about your work with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. Is it fair to say you were a profiler, and if so or if not, how did you help paint a picture of the bad guy?
Sure. Well, profiling is actually about 1/10 of what we do in the Behavioral Analysis Unit. But yes, I am an FBI trained profiler. And what we do in profiling is we actually reverse engineer the crimes. We work backwards from a crime scene to the type of individual who commits a crime. That's when you don't know the offender. But there are many times when the children know the offender. In fact, the vast majority of children are actually molested by people they know, either acquaintances or family members. And that can be extended family or immediate family. It can be people that they met online. It could be people that they meet in the course of their education, in their churches, in their community. But the vast majority, I'm talking about over 95%, are by people they know. Stranger danger is real, but it's a minute percentage of the kids that are victimized.
So would you say that, well, the question is there a typical sex offender? And if I answered my own question and said, well, you just told me it's more likely than not a family member, is it a weird family member?
No, not necessarily. There is actually a spectrum of behavior, of offending behavior. And there are offenders that are very bizarre and out there and extreme strangers. There are offenders that are very close family members. But the most important, the most dangerous offenders are those that we know and trust. They smile in your face. They are people that you know and love, that you turn your children over to. They are actually called acquaintance offenders or nice guy or pillar of the community offenders. And they're people that take advantage of our relationships with us to get access to our children. And I'll tell you this, if there's anybody who wants to spend time alone, any adult who wants to spend time alone with your children, if he wants to spend more time with your kids than you can stand spending with your kids, then that guy is setting up red flags. I would definitely question that.
Is one type of child more vulnerable than another? A shy, introverted child more likely to be abused, assaulted?
You bring up a great point. That is definitely a type that can be vulnerable, but some offenders do go after those shy, poor self-image children. Others go after the children who are the outstanding athletes, the ones who are at the top of their class, the ones who are more outgoing, extroverted, because they may be more risk takers and they may be able to push them into something or lead them or lure them into something a lot easier than the shy introverted type. So the shy introverted type may be the type that won't tell as easily, but if you get one of the extroverted type to do one of these bad behaviors that I was talking to you about, then you can keep him quiet as well. So it depends on the skill and ability of the offender.
Jim, should we then be pushing for a culture of paranoid parents? Because we do want to trust, we especially want to trust our family members. When does it reach a point where we say, red flag?
Okay, we don't want to be paranoid, but we want to be educated, and we want to have children who are educated. The best thing you can do to arm your children against this is to have an open dialogue back and forth with them. It has to be a discussion. They have to feel comfortable talking to you about sex. Now, most of us want to keep our children naive and sheltered from that kind of information, but the fact is, if we do that, we're setting them up. We're making them more vulnerable as victims. We do a lot of nonverbals that tell kids we don't talk about sex. Yeah. We whisper when we're talking to other adults. We turn the station down or off. If there's something sexual on it, we turn the radio down. But they are curious about it.
Yep.
But they know from our nonverbals that we do not want to talk about it. And unfortunately, that means they don't want to come to you if they have a problem. If they're in the middle of being groomed and they feel uncomfortable about this situation, because it's sexual and they've gotten all these nonverbals, they may never say anything to you, and that's the last thing you want as a parent.
Can you recommend a magic age where we can say, we need to be real frank and open with you, son or daughter?
Yes, as soon as they can listen to your voice.
Really?
It should be age appropriate, but it should be the whole time. I mean, when they're little children, when their diapers are being changed, you can tell them this is something that daddy and mommy do, and you know, these are your private parts, and you have the right to them and security in them, and you can talk to me anytime about anything, and I'll always love you. And that love and support, And the emotion coming out of you at the time, is it loving and supporting, or is it fearful and anxious? You have to overcome fear and anxiety about this so that you don't teach your kids that this is not a topic you talk about.
Boy, listening to you as a parent and thinking about my other parent friends out there, your advice is incredibly helpful and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Take us behind the scenes, if you will, when you're one-on-one with an offender, when you're in a room with a suspect and you're trying to get that information that will lead to a prosecution. Jim, what's it like? What are you doing back there?
Well, first of all, they're human beings. A lot of people want to call them monster predators.
Right.
And the first thing I want to tell you is it's a bad label. It teaches children to be afraid of lions and tigers and bears. When they think monster predator, they think some ugly guy who's lurking behind a tree somewhere. In fact, most people who get victimized, most children who get victimized, are victimized by someone who treats them nicely. They don't expect danger to come from that place. So we have to actually knock down those walls that we put up by calling them monster predators. They're people. If you call them evil, it sounds like they have all this special power.
That's true.
And how can a child stand up against someone who's evil? Remember, children grow up basically in a land of giants. Can you imagine if everybody that we met was twice as big as Shaq? I mean, we would be fearful.
We would
and
be.
we would listen to those kind of huge people because we really have no power against them. But when you're in a room with them, you want to, if you want them to actually disclose, you want to let them know that you know they're just human and they have a problem. And you are there to try to stop them from offending, from hurting kids. Many of them have convinced themselves that it doesn't hurt kids, that they love children. There are actually children lovers. They actually love children and they express that love in a sexual way, which of course is harmful to a child, but they've convinced themselves that it's not harmful. It's an expression of love. There are the other side who are very violent. And they don't care about children or their feelings. They're not in love with children, but they want to take advantage of them sexually. And you have to look at all human behavior on that kind of a spectrum. There's different types of offenders on different sides of that spectrum.
What about if a victim is in that chair or that room and you're trying to get him or her, the little one, to open up and share your professional advice with us, and hopefully we can use it at home too, because all I can think of is, hey, did somebody touch you today?
Right. Well, I can tell you that I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of children, and sometimes I've interviewed them with the parents present when they're young children, for example. And I've seen the parents be shocked at what the child tells me because they've already asked the child if they were touched in a bad way or if they were molested and so forth, and the child had denied it before. What I do is I learn whatever the level is that that child is at, and you communicate with them on that level. You don't try to talk down to them. You have to make them feel comfortable about this topic. You have to make sure that you're not uncomfortable talking about this topic. And when you are comfortable and open about it, then the chances of you actually getting truthful information from them is going to be greater. They have to feel safe. They have to understand that no matter what they tell me, that they're not in trouble and that their parents still love them, that they're still going to be able to live their life. Many times when children disclose, because it's against someone who is close to them, they're afraid of the consequences.
Right.
And the worst thing you could possibly do is sort of blow up when a child says something about somebody else. You should drill down and get details to find out if it's true or not, if somebody says, if there's a disclosure made. And the best thing you could ever do is bring the child to a child advocacy center where there are trained professionals that work together to interview the child one time and one time properly and record that interview so that the child, if they disclose, can be dealt with and justice can be served for that child.
Jim Clemente is a nationally renowned expert when it comes to child sex crimes. He knows how offenders and victims are wired. He knows why they behave the way they do, and he's sharing his expertise with us. Oh, and by the way, he's also one of the key figures in the hit drama Criminal Minds. So in our next segment, we want to talk about Criminal Minds, find out how true to life it is, and find out about Jim's role in that. Very privileged to have him here with us on the Means Report. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to the Means Report. We are with Jim Clemente, he of the FBI. In his previous life, now he's a Hollywood guy. He's a key part of the hit drama Criminal Minds, and it's amazing that you're lending your real-life expertise to this drama, making it less of a drama and more of a reality television.
Yes.
So I guess my first question is, how true to life is Criminal Minds? I guess with your input, it's got to be pretty close.
Well, I've been the technical advisor for the show since before it began, actually, and they do have a lot of reality in it. Every type of profiling work that we do, all the psychology behind it, all the investigative procedures are all real. We do crunch time, though. It happens a lot faster, and we don't get to fly around on a G5. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. You solve the case in an hour, which
Yeah.
which I know is not real because
Sometimes it takes days, weeks, months, and years to solve a case.
Before you did this, or when you were just say in the initial stages, you made it quite clear, Jim, that you wanted police officers out there who were watching to realize that you all weren't going to come in, the G-men that is, and take over and say, this is our case.
Right.
Have you been pleased with the way the show has played out in that regard, and what have you heard from cops?
Yes, I have been pleased. They've been the initial showrunner, the executive producer was Ed Bernero, and he was actually a retired cop. So he was really happy to be able to work to make sure that the cops out there in the real world knew that we were an asset for law enforcement. We didn't come in and take the stuff. And I've heard cops, I mean sheriffs from small towns call us up and say, hey, is it true what I just saw on TV last night that we could actually call and you'd help us? And we said, absolutely, that's what we're here for.
You know what, that's amazing, and it ties into my next question, which is, have you, at least in some small way, helped with actual cases?
Oh, absolutely, there's no question about it. First of all, Criminal Minds is seen by 12 to 18 million people when it's on the air. And then by the time it gets through syndication, it's over 100 million people worldwide. Many, many times I've gotten calls, and when I've done presentations around the world, people have said, oh, I learned this from the show, and I learned that. And I've had parents stand up and say, you helped save my daughter's life because she no longer cuts through that woods, and one girl was abducted through that same woods. She didn't do it because she watched Criminal Minds. And so I feel really proud of the fact that we're able to educate people while we entertain them with Criminal Minds.
I mean, really on a personal level, that's got to be pretty satisfying. I'm sure you knew about the power of television when you signed on for all this, but were you ready for stories like that?
No, I wasn't. In fact, the first time I saw a segment that I wrote on the air, it basically made the hair stand up on the back of my neck because it was so real, because they were able to dramatize it in a way that drove home the point much more than the way I just spoke the point when I talked to people around the world. It was amazing, and I realized then for the first time this is an amazing way to teach people to be safer, to help protect their children, and to make our community safer in general.
Jim, we talked at the top of the broadcast about your victimization at the hands of a camp director. Have we seen, and will we continue to see, your experiences played out on Criminal Minds?
Absolutely. Actually, CBS and ABC were really gracious in allowing me to tell my story through 3 episodes: Profiler Profiled, Foundation, and Restoration. And Derek Morgan, the character who's played by Shamar Moore, he was gracious enough to take on that role. And at first he was really anxious about it, to play the role of somebody who was victimized as a child. It's not very manly to most people, but he's a hero. He's a superhero. And for him to admit that he was victimized as a child and still be able to attain the role of not only FBI agent, but supervisory special agent and profiler, Derek Morgan, it was amazing for him to stand up and do that. And he's gotten calls and emails and texts from people all over the world thanking him for doing that.
What about in season 9, the episode called Gabby, where you played not a profiler, not a supervisory special agent, but a pedophile? What was that like for you?
Well, certainly it wasn't.
Did you channel the camp director?
Well, I certainly did. I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands, of offenders over the course of my career. And the fact is that I knew by playing that role that I was going to be able to talk to people about it. It would raise the issue so I could actually talk to people about it. A lot of people have asked me about it, and I've answered their questions. And just that dialogue, it helps tremendously. If we are open about it, if we actually talk to each other about this, then offenders can't hide in that secrecy. We can't have that conspiracy of silence anymore. Just because it's an uncomfortable topic doesn't mean that we don't need to discuss it to help protect our children, and that's really more important than anything else.
let's just say on the off chance there are one or two viewers who have not seen Criminal Minds, I want to point out to them that it is quite possible that on the episodes you have written, certainly, we will see you in those episodes. Is that something that you require when you write an episode, say put me in it, or you write yourself in it?
Well, I don't require it, but it's sort of homage to Alfred Hitchcock. He used to show up in a little bit in every one of his movies. In fact, in one where it was just a bunch of people lifeboat on a raft, the only way he could possibly figure out to do it was they put his picture on a newspaper and it floated by the raft on the front of the page. That's how he did it. And I've found some creative ways to also be in my episodes. But I think in this case, I did it on purpose because I wanted to make a statement about offenders. They can come from unexpected places. And although I played probably the poster boy for stranger danger in that particular role, there's also people who are incredibly good looking and incredibly accomplished who are also spending too much time with children, spending time alone with children, and that is a red flag.
How long does it take to write an episode?
Well, the writing process is about 2 months long, and it's a joint process with all the writers. We come up with the ideas. I tell them stories. They typically come up with ideas about episodes based on those stories, and we always blend 2 or more cases together because we don't want to take advantage or really get family members upset or anything like that. But we want the learning lessons from the real cases so we could actually teach people how to avoid being victimized and how to report these crimes, where the bad guys are, who they really are, what they look like, what they do. So it's a 2-month process, and then shooting it is an 8-day process. So you have 8 days to shoot 40 or 50 hours of tape and then boil it down to 43 minutes.
Let's talk about your service to this country outside of working for the FBI. You also were a first responder in conjunction with your work with the Bureau on 9/11. Tell me what you did that day, what your response was.
I was down in Quantico teaching a class. I saw the first tower fall, and I got in my car and I drove up to New York, and I dug on the pile for 5 days there, and then for the next 3 weeks at the Pentagon. They had called my entire unit to the Pentagon because of the classified nature of the documents in the building. They could only have FBI agents do the search and rescue work. So I spent 3.5 weeks basically digging at the 2 different sites.
And paid a heavy price health-wise.
Well, myself and 50 cops and firemen and about 8 other FBI agents all developed lymphoma shortly thereafter, and I'm fortunately here to talk about it. Unfortunately, some of my colleagues didn't make it.
How are you feeling though these days?
Good.
How's your health?
I'm energized. I'm happy to do this, and like I said, when I came to South Carolina and got such a warm welcome, I was just so happy to be here, and I'm glad people are so dedicated that you're actually covering this topic, although it's difficult to talk about. I'm just so honored that you would have me on to discuss it with the country and the community here.
It's an honor for us, and as I mentioned during the break, it's impossible to paint a full picture of who you are, Jim, in 22, 23 minutes. We've attempted to. Tell me that you put the camp director behind bars.
I did. Actually, it's how I became an FBI agent, actually. I went to the FBI, I went to PD task force. I disclosed to them what had happened to me 10 years earlier. I had been a prosecutor at that time and found out from a call from my brother that there were hundreds of other victims. I had no idea. I thought I was the only one. They did an investigation. I ended up going undercover and working with them, getting him to disclose some information. We were able to find 2 current victims, lock him up, and prosecuted him, and he went to jail.
10 years after the fact, so it's never too late.
No, it's never too late. In fact, most victims, in fact, the studies show that 20 to 30 years is the average time, but it's because we don't talk about it much. But what's amazing was, once I was done with that case, putting the guy who offended against me in jail, the FBI agent who I worked with handed me an application and said, "We'd like you to join the FBI." And I said, "What, they would take me even though I was a victim?" I actually thought that they wouldn't take me, but in fact, he said, "No, you did a great job. You're an attorney, you're a prosecutor. We'd love to have you." And I ended up working on that very same squad that had just investigated my case. So it was an amazing opportunity for me to turn lemons into lemonade and actually do something good with the information I had from my experiences.
Well, we very much appreciate you, and I know it's just a whirlwind visit to the South, but we're glad you came through for sure.
Well, I'll come back.
Absolutely. Jim Clemente, expert on just about anything, but especially in relation to his visit here, child sex crimes. play this episode back and take a lot of Jim's advice to heart. It has been absolutely helpful. When we come back on the Means Report, we're going to tell you how you can help shape future editions of this broadcast. We're also going to let you know how you can keep in touch with us, give your opinions of this show and others when we come back in a moment. Thanks again to Jim Clemente. What powerful advice and information he shared with us on the Means Report. I appreciate him so much. I also appreciate you watching, and your support of the Child Advocacy Center in Aiken is key. That's why Jim's in town. You see the center's website there, as well as their phone number, 803-644-5100. A wealth of information right there through our friends in Aiken. I want to remind you to stay in touch with the Means Report. It's easy to do that via the social networks, facebook.com/The Means Report or twitter.com/The Means Report. Great ways to share your thoughts, and we encourage you to do that. We will respond to you and let you know how much we appreciate you. You can also drop us an old-fashioned email. There's Marlena Wilson, our executive producer and director's address, mwilson@wjbf.com. And you can email me if you so choose. I'd love it if you would. Take some time on your smartphone or your tablet. Do it right now. bmeans@wjbf.com. Just put the Means Report on the subject line. And our episodes are typically posted by Monday night, and you can watch them on our website, wjbf.com, or while you're on the go via the WJBF mobile app. It is very easy to keep track of the episodes that you missed. And I know with a noon start time, church interferes, so thank you for taping us or for watching us later. And let us know what you think about the episodes. We do love that feedback for sure. You know, we always close the show by thanking members of the Means Report family, Levi and Marlena, and we do want to do that today as well. We want to include our friend Marlene. Marlene is Marlena's mother, and she lost a special member of her family recently. His name is TJ, and TJ is in heaven now, and we wish all the best to the Wilson family, and we say, God bless you, TJ, for sure. What an absolute angel now, in the truest sense of the word. For everybody here, take care.